This is
I think
the
there were a
Open
few
Global
women on there too, which surprised me.
Not
uh,
surprising
in
to me.
in the group chat. Oh, good. This is the Open Global Mind weekly call for October 16th, 2025. We were just bantering a little bit. Um, Dave and I have been in for the week, and Dave, I have to apologize. I haven't been able to make your sessions because they've overlapped with stuff. We've been part of a Sketch Your Mind virtual workshop all week that a Hungarian friend, Zsolt Visyan, decided to throw, and it's been great. It's been really like I found it super useful. I got to do a brain demo session on Tuesday morning. Dave, I don't know if you have any thoughts about it, but
I thought it was great, and it was well received, I think.
and it's what's nice is he's attracted a good who's who of people who care about visualization and graphic facilitation and thinking with pictures, and aces like Dave who've been putting concepts into visuals for years and years and years and years and years, and it's collaborative. It's there's a very nice feel to it. We're kind of attending one another's sessions and on from there. I will put a link to the conference in the chat. Sketch Your Mind is the name of it, and I'll put a link to it in the chat. And then off we go. And then Stacy, I wanted to mention to you that I just recorded I just recorded a podcast about masculinity with Mo Carrick. I'll put a link to her bio, her LinkedIn in the chat as well. I met her when I was in Berkeley at the Responsive Conference, and we had a really delightful conversation about all aspects about masculinity. So I have to do some very, very light editing on it and then post that.
Thank you. Look forward to that.
And maybe, I mean, a good idea might be I'll post that, and then we can have that as a topic for an OGM call.
I like that.
See how that goes. Groovy. Nice to see everybody here. I was inspired for this topic just by recent news and by kind of an awareness that generally, but not exclusively or entirely, this is a left-leaning group. We sort of have attracted like minds, and some of us are more toward the middle, but very few of us are out on the right wing of political opinion these days. And when things happen, we tend to have a similar response. And I was struck recently that through bluster and force, and I don't know what other kinds of things, Donald Trump seems to have cracked some code on the Gaza situation and achieved a ceasefire and an exchange of hostages, which ends the hostage problem for the moment. There are no remaining October 7 hostages that we know of, alive or dead. I guess maybe some of the bodies have yet to be recovered and returned, but in general, that thing is resolved. How Gaza plays out, we don't know. If Trump has his way, it'll turn into a resort city with large Trump towers on it. A thought that chills my blood. But hey, there we are.
He seems to have dropped that.
Yeah, maybe.
Never know anything with him. Yeah.
Yeah, he's apparently also got plans on his in the Oval Office. He's got mock-ups of a new Arc of Triumph kind of thing opposite opposite Arlington National Cemetery across the river, and he's adding stuff like the ballroom and other sorts of things to the White House, gilding it all in gold, etc. He's leaving his mark. He's absolutely leaving his mark. But I'm straying from our topic in a way that I don't particularly want to, because I kind of want to. I'll come back to it. Then I heard the news that I didn't realize, but that the recent the Nobel Peace Prize winner Maria Corina Machado dedicated her Nobel Prize to the people of Venezuela and Donald Trump. And I sort of Googled that, and I saw. I Googled that, and I saw an article from The Nation that was like, "Oh my God, what a sellout! This is terrible!" Blah blah blah. And then I heard some backstory. And the backstory I heard, which I'll share here, which is Googleable also if you're looking for it, was that Trump is the only president who has actually sent like Navy offshore and started to actively do stuff that is helpful to people against Maduro. He's put a $40 million bounty on Maduro's head. Whether that's even legal in the world, I don't know. Likely that it's not, but somehow or other through, and the reason that Machado dedicates their award to him is he has actually done something and moved the needle. And sometimes you move the needle by scratching the record. I don't know, I'm stretching the metaphor. But I'm left leaning, and I was like, how do I process this? How do I handle this? And I'd like us not to talk about Trump and Machado and this particular incident, but rather other instances of hearing stuff that conflicts with our worldview and figuring out, do we shift our worldview some? What do we do? How do we do that? I'd rather focus there than on the incident, although I will understand if we need to spend some time decompressing the incident right now. So Gil.
Yeah. So the topic for today is shifting one's worldview?
No, the
And-
topic is just dealing with uncomfortable news,
Okay.
which taps into shifting one's worldview. But it's just like, how do we handle news that doesn't fit our worldview? Is maybe the
Yeah.
generalization of the topic.
Got it. Good topic, and plenty of opportunity for that these days. Um, just on the immediate one, and maybe this is a good jumping off point. I'm not of the mind that someone should get the Nobel Peace Prize for putting warships off somebody's coast. Kind of doesn't fit my picture of a Nobel Peace Prize. On the other hand, um, um, I'm cautiously impressed with what Trump has done in the Middle East, but I also don't think that somebody should get the Nobel Peace Prize for starting an initiative. I don't think Obama should have gotten it when he did.
Obama, the Peace Prize he got seems
No,
completely
it was
ridiculous.
performative, and I don't think Trump
Yeah.
deserves it now, but he might well deserve it in a year if this thing holds. Yeah, and that challenges my pictures of a bumbling, narcissistic, baby guy. Kimmel's been reaming him beautifully every night, and really brilliant work going on there. But that doesn't mean that he can't do some things successfully and well. And it
Okay.
may be that just the character that he brings to it was very different than Biden's. Could
Yeah.
generate movement in the Middle East that nobody else could. So cautiously optimistic there. Big change in my worldview because I have him on the neg list for everything except now one thing's moved over. Maybe,
Um,
maybe.
maybe. Okay, good. So I want to loosen up that part of the topic. My buddy Al Chang, who always says wise things and always thinks differently than I do, but we can talk really, really well, said a while ago that it's as if there's this set of facts on the ground, and the left and the right are seeing roughly the same fact, roughly, not always,
Mm,
but roughly the same facts, but have a completely different movie script around them, a totally different narrative. But the narratives are relatively consistent and work. And the two sides can't see or read each other's narratives. They're incapable. And this is I'm paraphrasing Al badly, but he really kind of made me slow down a little bit and think, how do I steel man the opposing narrative? How do I actually put my brain into it and listen for those different parts? So when Trump was like, I've stopped 8 wars, I used Claude and ChatGPT to say, hey, and Trump has actually, he has sent his people all over the place to do stuff, and he claimed credit for India, Pakistan, which infuriated Modi and is stupid. But the other things that he claims to have done, he's actually been like on the ground, not him on the ground. His people have been doing stuff that hasn't been done before. And that's very interesting to me because he gives a damn about like, making a mark in foreign policy with his particular imprimatur. Anyway, Mike.
Um, I don't know where to go exactly, but let me start by just saying that the commentary about the Nobel Peace Prize was she said it's dedicated to the people of Venezuela and that she thanks Trump. I don't think she used
I've
the
got,
word dedicated it
I've
to
got the
it.
quote. It's dedicated. It's oops. Let me see where how did I'll find it.
Well,
But
most of the quotations have been sort of two-phased. But anyway,
so here, let me
um,
read it.
the fact is that she's in a bind. She has to be as obsequious as possible.
That's a way of
That's
reading it. But listen to this. I dedicate at the last sentence of a long post on X. I dedicate this prize to the suffering people of Venezuela and to President Trump for his decisive support of our cause! Exclamation point.
Well,
That's
the
the
first
quote.
round, and I think she actually called him up and
Yes,
said, you
they
know,
had a call.
yeah. But again, if you're in her position and you've got somebody who's angry he doesn't have the Peace Prize and you need his help, I mean, whether those words reflect what she really believes is what I'm saying. But the other thing I
agree
wanted
with you.
to say is that I've been using the phrase cosplay diplomacy
Hmm.
over and over again because that's what we're seeing. I mean, these claims that he somehow reconciled or stopped a fight between Armenia and Azerbaijan. I mean, it's these are temporary things that are happening, but let's wait 5 years and look back. And particularly with Gaza. I mean, Gaza, he says he has a deal. And maybe in the New York City real estate sense of the word deal, he has a deal where, okay, we've got a common goal and now let's figure out the details. But no diplomat would claim that what Hamas said they would half agree to is a final deal. I mean, it's already falling apart. So, in many ways, this is like the way that Trump ended the U.S. involvement in Afghanistan. He didn't talk to the Afghan government. He talked to the Taliban, and they got a deal, which was completely vague and didn't have any checks, any way of making sure both parties fulfilled their piece of the deal. And for his convenience, he set it up so that the withdrawal happened after he was out of office.
Right.
And Biden got to have all this egg on his face because of an incompetent deal that uh, Trump and his team had agreed to. And I really worry that if you've got a deal with Hamas that says they will disarm, but they explicitly said, we didn't agree to that part of the deal. But he still thinks he deserves a peace prize. But let me change topics to a third thing that uh, is very personal, and that is 2 days ago, I got some incredibly unforeseen, incredible, outrageous, very upsetting news about one of my favorite colleagues here at Carnegie. And some of you may have seen the story. We have one of the very top analysts who studies Indian military and geopolitics. And his house was raided recently by the FBI, and they found more than 1,000 top secret and confidential documents. And he's been an advisor to the State Department. He knows full well how to handle classified documents, but it's leading to all sorts of stories about, is he a spy for the Chinese? He hasn't been accused of that, but it's just astonishing that someone, if this is true, how could someone so smart and so experienced be so stupid? It's a little bit like Sandy Berger, um, Clinton's national security advisor, who went to the archives and decided to take a couple documents and stuff them in his pants and walk out the door, but on a much larger scale. And so again, I mean, this was it's a complete disconnect from everything I know about this scholar, and it makes no sense. And I'm having a very hard time dealing with it. I don't know how I will.
Thank you very much for offering up a completely different example of this thing going on, because that's what I'd love to focus on is how do we handle unwelcome, ill-fitting news in our worldview, and do we allow our worldviews to be permeable to things like that or not, or how, or like what's that juncture? Thank you, Kevin, please. You took your hand down, but there you go. There you
Yeah.
go. You did.
So this is actually the opposite of that. I've got some surprisingly great news I don't know how to put together. Yeah, some people know, our house was rendered uninhabitable, and 1 in 6 houses in our low status neighborhood of Swananoa were rendered either destroyed or uninhabitable, about 400 houses. And we've been asked to do a housing fund for the folks. And most of the Latino folks moved there because it was the cheapest place in the county. And we're starting to work with the community on it, and they're really got a lot of credibility. And we got an outreach this week through my son, and we're going to have 25 old order Mennonite carpenters living on our farm in their self-contained, trucks and whatever they do. And they're going to build houses for free from November through May, and want to do it again next year. And they're also going to leave behind a 30 by 40 foot, what is going to be their mess hall, eating room, whatever. And we'll have this building, and they're going to rehab our house for free. Do at least the sheetrock and the insulation and stuff. We have to decide, if becomes an Airbnb, you don't need the large mudroom that we had for 5 people. So you have to do some other things. But it's just amazingly, surprisingly good. They're going to clean it up, and they're going to fix the house for free, and they're going to build about 20 houses for free. So that, our raise for our fund went down by, the labor on 20 houses is no longer in our math for the first year. So it's like, well, sometimes things happen like that too. I just need to, sometimes there are days like that where everything, I'll do a brief thing. I was taking my son on a college trip. He's 47 now, so whatever. But we were flying upstate New York to Bard, I think it was. And we got upgraded to first class, and we got, champagne or whatever in the morning. And then we got to the hotel. And it was apparently closed, but there was this massive Samoan guy working on the phones. He said, just grab a key, and nobody ever came. So we sampled single malts from their deck. That's my first sampling of single malts. We went to the movie Smoke, and they said, oh, we're through taking tickets, just go inside. So I told them, I said, look, sometimes there are days like this, and so, suddenly, 25 to 30 old order, and they wear straw hats, and they get driven around, and they'll bring some horse-drawn things, but they have, they have people drive their semi-trailer with all their tools. They use power tools, but it's just like, sometimes things happen like that. I just need to say.
Happy to hear happy news around Swannanoa. Thank you.
Yeah, stitching together all these new resources is going to be really complicated. I need people who are much better at figuring out how to handle that than I am, and there are people around. So
Love that. Gil, please.
Yeah. Kevin, why is that a challenge to your worldview?
why is what?
Why is all that good stuff that's happened a challenge to your worldview, given that that's the theme?
Oh, it doesn't. No, sometimes things happen like that. It just then you have to deal with this. Surprising abundance requires lots of coordination. That's. I mean, it will require lots of coordination. It doesn't challenge. No, it challenges the worldview in here, saying let's think about bad things. I was saying no, let's think about good things too.
Good deal. I love it. Jerry, by the way, could you raise the gain on your mic? You're much softer than everybody else.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I've actually switched over to this mic.
With your fancy new mic?
Yeah, no.
Couple of things. Back on the Machado thing, it seems that obsequiousness is one of the required things with this president. And if you've watched a cabinet meeting, you can see that in full cringe. Seems to be a necessary part of any conversation. Back to what you're saying, Jerry, about left and right seeing the same facts and developing different interpretations. That I'm excuse me, I'm big on interpretations. I'm not big on facts these days. I think we live in interpretations, and that's part of the currency of human affairs and where it gets really interesting. But part of the challenge right now is that left and right are not seeing the same facts. Folks are in deep, deep bubbles, not even being exposed to the same information, things that we think are obvious, folks who are living on Fox never see, and vice versa. So it's a whole other layer of challenge to how we have reasonable conversations when we're just looking at utterly same detail. In personal terms, I found that happening with me around the whole Gaza situation over the last 3 or 4 months, where I've come to the conclusion that I have no fucking clue of what was going on there. I don't trust Hamas and the Gaza Health Ministry or news services or anything like that. I don't trust the Israeli government's information. I don't trust the UN. And I try to piece together stories from anomalous reports that contradict each other from people who aren't there, and I'm not there. And it's very strange for me to come to the conclusion that I really don't know what happened. And I'm happy to go into detail about that. I've done some numerical analysis, excuse me, of some of the data that's been reported, and things just don't cohere from what I can see. And it's forced a kind of humility on me that's really unfamiliar. I'm used to being able to, look at a bunch of complex information and draw a conclusion that I have some confidence in, and can't in that case. So double layer, not seeing the same facts and mixed up facts that don't fit together makes this even more challenging.
Thanks, Gil. Is my voice a little louder? I found the gain and turned it up.
It's better now, thanks.
Is it loud enough? Should I turn it up more?
Somebody else say something.
We're good?
No, let's have somebody else say something and compare levels.
Somebody else to compare
It
levels.
sounds good to me, Jerry.
Yeah, sounds fine, Jerry.
Okay, good. Thank you, Gil. Thank you very much for pointing that out. On the point of not seeing the same facts, I want to complexify that a little bit, if I can borrow Adam Grant's term. There's a book out called Progressive Myths. I'll put a link to it in the chat. And I only know about it because my buddy Sami Mikalainen, Finn, who lives in Melbourne, wrote a review about it. And he said this, and I'm just realizing this moment that this is a reason for the topic that we're on right now, is that this was in the back of my head. And I hadn't realized that, I didn't connect it to the Gaza news. And apparently in this book, a lot of what happened, which I've not read, a lot of what happens is the taking apart of situations where left and right disagree, and seeing that the situations are more complicated than you thought they were. That it isn't black and white. That it isn't this or that. And from my conversation with Al, I think the left sees. I think a lot of the left believes that the right isn't even seeing things that happened. When what's happening sometimes on the right is they're seeing the incident, but they're gathering different information about it and seeing it with a different lens or a different disaggregation of components. I don't know exactly how to say it. And since I haven't read the book, I don't know the details in it. But that's a piece of what I'm aiming for is, hey, might we be able to have more interesting conversations about things that have happened if we allowed the complexity to show up in this space and the possibility that the other side isn't completely stupid and evil, which I hear a lot. Like really, years ago, in 2015, I think this was before the 2016 election, April and I visited some dear family friends who live in Boulder, and we had a friendly political conversation in which I said, Trump is actually sort of smarter than people think he is. And there was no synonym for smart that I could use that would make them go, oh, okay, we sort of agree. So we had a little bet going, and it turned into a funny thing. But smart like a mafia don, maybe, I don't know, but it's some sort of intelligent, because nobody survives 91 91 indictments, and winds up running the world and closing a deal in Gaza. Who is an idiot? Like I don't see how you can just be lucky enough to do that. And I'll put a link to in fact, I created some videos during the pandemic about Trump. I created a field manual around Donald Trump. It's 6 videos. I'll just put a link to the playlist. And the very first one is, Trump is smarter than people think, right? And it's hard to say. And so I'm trying to figure out, how do we not make the situations black and white, and like, oh my God, when they do hateful things, like boast that they have to be given a Nobel Peace Prize. What person in their right mind does that? Like, nobody goes and says, you must give me this award. I deserve, like that's, well, okay, maybe that's just this guy's style. And there are things that Trump and his minions have done which are horrifying and are harming people. And I am like dramatically opposed to those. But I'm trying to find words to say, how do we not look at all of this and say there's nothing in here that we can talk about, or that we can agree on, or that whatever else. So, Gil, please.
Somebody can be both smart and not in their right mind. Somebody can be smart about certain things and stupid about other things. Somebody can be, can be effective in certain ways and ineffective in other ways. And this guy is complicated. And that's part of the challenge here. Again, I don't think we're seeing the same facts. I sometimes hop between MSNBC and Fox News in the evening. And you'd think they're on different planets. The story is just, covered on one, not covered at all on the other. Not just covered differently, but just not covered at all. Things that we might think totally important, not there all week on Fox. So there's that as kind of one of the bases of it. But I hear and really resonate, Jerry, with what you're saying, because there's a tendency, and I don't think this is left or right. Maybe it's modern capitalist culture of really polarizing and calling things black and white that are complex, and washing out nuance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's part of the mess that we're in. I've shared before, a friend I've made on the MAGA right, introduced by a mutual friend who we both love and trust, and we had a fascinating first conversation. Ostensibly, it was going to be about climate, and I was going to change his mind about things, and discovered him changing my mind about things around supply side economics and other stuff. We came out of that conversation loving each other. We're still friends. We still disagree. We have changed each other. We occasionally agree in surprising ways and often don't. But we found a way to have that different kind of conversation that you're talking about. I'm just back from the Sustainable Brands Conference in San Diego, and one of the presentations on Monday was from a guy named Bill Shireman, who's a longtime friend of mine, who's probably my favorite Republican environmentalist, and used to organize with Nader around the California bottle bill, and parted ways on other political issues. Bill did a presentation about how to talk to MAGA. And one of the things he did, one of the pieces that stood out was he set up a pair of slides of 4 MAGA people and 4 progressive people, and said, look, these sides are not at all the same. On the Republican side, you've got Bannon, and you've got Pence, and you've got Alex Jones, and you've got whoever, Mike Johnson. Not all the same people, not all the same thinking, analyses, political positions, and so forth, but we lump them. And you can do the same thing on the left. And it's very easy to humans seem to love to categorize.
We do.
We love to take shades of gray, as Dave might talk about, and try to delineate them and put them into boxes and say this is this and not that. And real often in the physical world, it's not that way. Even around things like shades of gray and colors. We've talked about the color maps that are read and named differently in different cultures. What I will call blue, someone in Japan will call green. So how do we have a conversation?
And
that
Russian
doesn't
apparently has 4
acknowledge that?
different words for blue. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is really important territory, and it's very challenging. And we're in a culture that doesn't support the kind of conversation that you're proposing that we have.
Sorry.
Oh, wow. Can you tell me what, I'm
Thanks,
sorry,
Kalia.
Chatham House rules are? Can you tell me what?
Sure. Chatham House is an organization in England, and when you say something is under Chatham House rules, it means everything that's said under this in this meeting, which cannot be identified with the speaker. You can't say so and so said this. You can. My understanding under Chatham House is you can write about what got said. You just can't attribute it to anybody without their agreement. So if you need to quote, if Kevin said something that you want to write about in an article, you'd have to contact Kevin, get his approval to say Kevin said it. But I believe you can still say someone said X.
Yes.
But you
Thank
can't reveal who was there. Because
Correct.
sometimes
Yeah.
saying that this was said will be immediately linked to the one person in the room who would have said it.
Yep.
Yeah. And Jerry, I was not clear about this for a long time. I was very surprised when I first discovered that OGM was being posted to YouTube, because I had talked about very personal things in these meetings that I assumed were just among us. So the ground rules should be made more clear, especially if there's new people coming in.
I have a question, because I think in the posting to YouTube, the chat is not shared. It's just the video, correct?
I don't post the chat on YouTube, but I do make the chat very available. I should mention more often that these videos I do post directly. I'm a big believer in sort of open conversations, and these videos do go to YouTube, and that will have an effect on what we decide to talk about, and I'm quite aware of that. So my apologies for not repeating that more often, because we actually all should be quite aware of that. Doug.
So yeah, I was really I was really intrigued by your intro to this session, and had an experience in the last 24 hours with a post that sort of the combination of the two, I think, is worth sharing. So there was a post that did like a serious drill down on our current Supreme Court head, and his relationship and history with the Voting Rights Act, which is long and deep and anti, with a capital A. And I read this piece, which was very grounded, very credible, and shed him for me in a completely different light. Like, I've experienced his position as sort of an unknown quasi-neutral in terms of the persona that I think he's publicly attempted to achieve for himself, Roberts. But what this post made clear was, no, he's a hardcore ideologue about certain things related to presidential power and related to killing the Voting Rights Act. And there was the theater and illusion, the public persona, and then there was that. And then connecting that to, so we know which way this whole redistricting thing is going to come out. And it's not going to be good. And my orientation to receiving that recalibration, like it was exactly what you described in the intro to this session, of receiving something that's just like, was I can be reactive to that, or I can just sort of recalibrate my understanding of the world. Like, that's the way that piece of the existing puzzle is, in fact. And it gives me a better sense of the degree to which effectively the court system has been zeroed out as well. While the sort of wishful thinking underlying sense impression up to that moment was maybe there's some salvation to be had out of the court system, but no, it's been done, like taken care of, going back to when this guy was a law clerk for Rehnquist. And and it was sort of like there are all those knock-on recalibration, reconfiguration of the way of seeing what is, as sort of a ripple effect. It's sort of an update of the vision of the map of the picture.
Can you describe that a little bit more?
Yeah. So, if I'm carrying this mosaic of, the state of our government and its decimation, and I'm looking for pockets of integrity being held. I'm looking for pockets of structural, persistence against the destruction and collapse. And I believe there are still some features of that landscape effective, functioning, and operating. And all of a sudden, like, the one sort of remaining pillar that held some promise is zeroed out. So effectively, it's all gone. And how bad will they make it? How bad does it get? How much will that manifest, in consequences? And I'm, picking up data bits about failure sectors in the economy that are not public, that haven't been like highlighted. Um, the number of farmer bankruptcy filings under 12 is going through the roof, and they don't have the labor to harvest crops. So like that, how soon do the supermarket shelves start going there? This is like now. This isn't some objective future. This is now, and you know, since the current course doesn't suggest actions within agencies are being governed by any sense of rule of law anymore. So, when does Social Security check stop? For me, because of whatever category I fall into, or whatever office gets decimated through layoffs. So it's very much trying to find clarity, personal clarity, sense of balance. What is reality? What is my reality now? I really endeavor to not react, but to figure out, how to relate. It's not even rising to the level of how to respond or how to act or do or contribute or whatever. Like that's a whole secondary thing. It's like how to relate to the scale and scope of changing reality, and find my ground first before going to the, okay, so is there a way I want to respond or directly engage in some kind of collaborative way or communication or engagement way, like going on Saturday to the local No Kings demonstration. So just slowing it down and checking in. So I'm complete.
Thanks, Doug. You've brought a bunch of things into my brain that I want to share out. First, I'm among probably a large group of Americans who are pretty convinced that ICE tracking down immigrants, a lot of whom are agricultural farm workers, and the tariffs and all that kind of stuff would lead to, by now, pretty miserable inflation and food shortages and other kinds of things. There are some price bumps, but I don't think that dreadful future has materialized. The system has adapted, and the shoe may drop later. I don't know, but it didn't materialize the way the catastrophizers said immediately it was going to, and that happens all the time on all sides, right? So that reminded me of the book Super Forecasting by Philip Tetlock. And he talks in the book about what makes a good forecast. And the problem is that most futurists and forecasters and all that make crappy forecasts where you really can't tell whether they were right or wrong. And that's the sign of a good weasel forecast is you say something that gets you some news and that can't be pinned down later on. It's like, I was just off on the date. It happened, but 5 years later. Like, yeah, that was a bad forecast. And so he has criteria with the Good Judgment Project. He's found some people who are really, really good super forecasters. And I'm wondering to what extent, and this would be a very nice sense-making global brainy kind of thing, to what extent can or should people writing about stuff try to do better on these fronts and then judge themselves afterward. And I highly respect bloggers and Substackers and other sorts of people who occasionally say, hey, here's how I did on last year's predictions or on last, whatever it is. When they go back and grade themselves, even if sometimes they're a little lenient on themselves, that's interesting because at least there's some kind of feedback loop of what's happening there, right? I'm very interested in the feedback and the social feedback. And also then I'll add, forecasting is really hard because some of these systems that we're talking about, like global warming, tipping points, and all that, are deeply nonlinear. And by the time you detect the third dot or the fourth dot, the fifth dot is way the hell north of where you thought it was going to be, and we're in serious, serious trouble. And how do you use the feedback I'm describing and public discourse and news and other sorts of things that are heightened, that are improved in some way by doing some of what I just described? In a situation where when one of these things runs amok, it could run really amok. And the way Trump handles foreign policy, man, if Putin feels cornered and decides to throw nukes, that's going to change the game considerably, right? And I don't know how these things play out, but I'm wondering how all that works. Gil, please.
Totally yes, Jerry. And again, it's the hazard of the lack of sensitivity to complexity, and for people to see nuance and see complex systems and understand that cause and effect is not all that it's cracked up to be. And how do you navigate in the midst of all that uncertainty? On the prediction thing, the great Ken Watt was trying to put together something decades ago to do a systematic retrospective analysis of predictions, which I don't know if anybody's ever done. You look at market touts who are predicting the same thing for decades, and then all of a sudden they're right when that thing happens. But they've been saying it every year forever. I've been describing myself lately as a futurist who's given up predicting the future because I think it's a fool's game at this point. Something else I want to say about that.
The Institute for the Future says we don't do predictions. We make forecasts, which are practical, plausible projections of something that might happen in the future, but we don't know, and nobody can tell which one's going to play out.
Yeah. And that's the power of scenario analysis, among other tools.
Right.
Exactly for that. People think it's predictive, but it's not. It's to sensitize us to possibility, and hopefully change the way that we think about stuff. There was something else I wanted to say, but it slipped, so off to someone else. Oh, yeah. Yes, the thing you said, Jerry, about we haven't seen the impact of the farm labor shortage yet. Don't get too confident. It's still the first season. There's still more harvest to come. It's I don't have detailed analysis on it, but the mood that I'm getting is that there's a mess looming.
I hear you.
Yeah.
And I'd love to sort of say that means this number by this date or something. And I don't know that I challenge OGMers to always pin things down that way, but we might want to have a session about what a good forecast looks like and just train ourselves a bit. Go find a couple videos and have somebody volunteer to brief us on how to be more precise about forecasts.
For sure. Let me personalize a bit, coming off of what Doug said on the Social Security thing. We've been looking at a bunch of financial and real estate decisions, and early this year, we decided that we couldn't make certain moves because Social Security might just get yanked, which would completely change our spectrum of financial options. We've come to the conclusion now that it's probably not going to get yanked for folks like us. We've been on Social Security for 10 years, et cetera. For folks coming into the system, very much at risk. People not yet retired, don't count on it at all. People maybe a year or two in, may be at risk. I think for later folks, probably not. But again, so there's a calculation based on very incomplete data and all sorts of stuff that we have no way to know anything about. And yet we have to make decisions. And it's one of the more stressful things we've worked through that we can remember.
Mm-hmm. And decision making under uncertainty is one of those monster themes, right? Stacy, please.
Yeah, speaking to your idea about prediction, as I was thinking about this yesterday, because as you know, I'm interested in engaging people in conversations. And I was just thinking it would be so nice if we could have a conversation that starts with, if this is true, then we would expect to see this. If this is true, we would expect to see this. My particular area that I was focused on has to do with immigration, because I'm trying to convince the people in my community that this is a money grab and a for-profit detention, because I'm combating the local misinformation that's going on. What I'm actually seeing, I mean, in one case, I'm very happy. After somebody was detained for over 2 months, they were finally released. I'm grateful they were released. I don't want to throw attention on the judges that are eventually releasing the people. But at the same time, I have a feeling we're going to look back and we're going to see all this money that was spent detaining people to finally release them back to their families. So to me, it would be productive to say, okay, let's look at that. That's one scenario. Let's see how many people, after they finally show up in court, we wind up sending back. At least if we could have a conversation and maybe have that drive the spotlight to look on individual cases and what's going on locally, where on a local level, we really see firsthand who's getting targeted and why they're getting targeted and all those things. It could bring the people in the middle together. You know, Gil put in the chat that the speaker had said that one way of looking at the difference between the left and the right is that the right the right are like looking at themselves as protectors and the left as liberators. And to a certain degree, I think that's true. And for me, I always look at the intersection. You know, where are those people right in the middle? Because depending on who I'm talking to, I try to get them to see the other piece that they're missing. So like if I'm talking to that protector person, I'm going to recognize that and showing how this action is a protecting one and vice versa. But again, we're always behind the 8 ball of predicting. Like, why can't we jump ahead and get together, all of us, and say, okay, everybody, let's brainstorm. We're not saying who's right or wrong. If this is the case, this is what we're going to see. If this is the case, this is what we're going to see. Let's just agree on what would happen if, instead of digging down on this is what's happening. Over.
So thanks, Stacey. So making these forecasts, and I'll use the word very loosely, more provisional or conditional on some facts on the ground or things like that. I think that makes sense.
On what the measurement would,
Yeah.
like, let's just agree on that, because also it will help people come in at a beginner's level and generate some ideas. Like, let's just start at the beginner's level.
Yeah. You've also reminded me that the same administration that is doing those kinds of things has unmarked cars on the street with ICE people who have no badges visible and have masks on, who are abducting people. And I grew up partly in Argentina. I'm old enough that we left Argentina just before the Dirty War started. And I went back in 89, I guess, at some point. No, sorry, in 85. I had a project actually that took me to Buenos Aires, Argentina. And as a goodbye gift, they gave me the book Nunca Más, which means never again, which is a book compiled out of all of the testimonies from the Truth and Reconciliation Commissions that happened in Argentina after the Dirty War. And one of the interesting factors in Argentina was during the Dirty War, the Ford Falcon, a dark green Ford Falcon, was a very scary car to see in the street, because that's what the military police and others used to abduct people. So if a Ford Falcon pulled up in front of your house, they were probably going to like search you and maybe take you away, and maybe you wouldn't be seen again. And so for me, the idea that people on American streets, and I won't say American citizens because maybe they're not, I don't know, but people walking down American streets are being abducted with no identification, and we don't know where they go, is deeply, deeply frightening, because it leads for me straight to things that I think are horrible historically. And I don't know which parts of that little narrative to complexify and to say, oh, but, and this, there, and I don't know. I don't know. it's these are we live in troubling, scary times, and I'm part of this conversation is to say, how do we handle these conversations in a way that lets us remain a bit pliable or permeable, so that we can find more understanding and so forth. Gil, go ahead.
And put the masked armed thugs in unmarked vehicles together with stand your ground laws. And then what happens?
Well, also, the Black Panther Party originally was the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, I believe, and they found a law that said you can you can be armed and stand as long as you're X number of yards or feet away from police. You can stand there armed and watch them, and it's legal.
No, but
And
legal,
so
but we're in a time when legal doesn't matter. Because what they're doing is
I
not
totally agree.
legal, and they're arresting people who are standing there videoing them from across the street.
Yeah.
So,
They're operating in extra legal ways. And one of my fears is that the court system, the entire legal system, is now disabled.
well, hang on.
Yeah, good.
One of the other talks at Sustainable Brands was from Andrew Winston, saying that I'm going to go a little sideways for a moment here, saying that he's a major speaker to sustainable business, and he's always asked, he says, is sustainability dead? And he said, no, it's not dead. It's under attack, which is different. And things aren't under attack unless there's reason for them to be attacked. So same thing here. The court system is not over. It's very much under threat. Most of the decisions, there's like hundreds of lawsuits against these guys, and most of them they have lost. What's up for question is where the Supremes are going to go. Because we're at the mercy here of a 40-year project by Rehnquist and Alito to do what they're doing. This was laid out back during the Nixon administration, or Reagan, I guess is what they were under. They're not quite old enough for that. So we don't know there's this voting rights decisions that could come this week or next week that could change, that could lock the elections down for a long time to come if we have elections. So I don't mean to make light of it, but the courts are an important battleground. Notable yesterday, I don't know if people saw this on the news, but pretty much unified, the national news organizations refused to sign Pete Hegseth's loyalty oath. And maybe people are starting to realize that instead of letting Trump pick you off one by one, as surprisingly the major law firms did, and a lot of the universities did, people can actually forge common purpose and fight back. And what does that mean in terms of bad Supreme Court decisions? I don't know. But I'm not, game ain't over till the fat lady's sung, or whatever the expression is. And she ain't sung yet.
Surprised that saying had such long legs over time.
Yeah. Well, the fat lady had short legs, but that's a different thing.
Yeah, who knows? Anyone else? Thoughts on this topic? Concerns? Disagreements? Wishes? Should we switch topics?
No, it's obviously time to be quiet for a while.
We could be quiet for a little while, see what shows up.
Well, this is Mike not being quiet. I do think one of the strategies you outlined at the very start is being quiet long enough to understand that you may have been wrong about something you assume to be right. And unfortunately, we're not given time to do that anymore. I mean, I don't think we've been given time to do that for 30 or 40 years. We used to have, and I still go to church and there's some meditation time there, but even that is typically 30 seconds, I mean, if we have a really meaningful sermon, maybe there'll be 2 minutes where people just kind of calm and, what do I want to take home from this? But I do think we're so overstressed, we're so sleep deprived that we don't know how to handle the confused inputs that are coming from all these different directions and contradicting themselves. One of my favorite hashtags lately has been discombobulation. You know, disinformation leads to deception, leads to discord, leads to discombobulation, leads to despair and or apathy. And that's a short step to dictatorship. Because if enough people just sit on the sidelines and throw up their hands and say, I don't know what's going on, that's where we end up.
Um, two two reactions to what you just said, Mike. One positive, one negative. The negative one is one of the current tactics of the current, at least far right, is to flood the zone with shit. That is a very explicit tactic that if you have people too busy to deal with, they'll just drop everything. And also too confused about which side to be on because, oh, wait a minute, the baddie is funding the good guys that I'm listening to. Maybe I should stop listening to the good guys. And there's a documentary I love called Hypernormalization by Adam Curtis, where he talks about Putin and his Lieutenant Surkov, who were doing this for years ago. They were sort of busy honing this, perfecting this art of flooding the zone with shit. And that's happening. But on the other hand, maybe this is the positive side. I don't know. This is also about attention management. And Ken Homer just wrote us a lovely poem, that he just read to us about stepping out of the torrent and the conversations and things like that. And it's not that we aren't given the time; it's that we don't make the time. I think that it's possible. And when there's too much information, I don't mean you can suddenly magically make the time to know all of that and to sort it out. I think what you do is you step out of it and have focus on something else. But there's a growing little niche in the world about how do you cope with change and how do you maintain equanimity in the face of actual turbulence and political turbulence and emotional turbulence and other kinds of things that are happening. And that's probably a good topic for an OGM call at some point as well. Gil, please.
Yeah, it is a good topic. One of the things we've done in our house is dramatically cut down on our news diet. So I suggest that as a possibility. On the matter of time and quiet, and Mike, thanks for what you said. I don't know if people have watched Charlie Kirk's competitive debate forum. Thanks. I've seen Mehdi Hassan do this on the left and Charlie Kirk do this on the right, where they sit at a table. It's like a chess match table, two small tables
Mm-hmm.
facing off, and they're surrounded by a circle of about 20 or 30 people. And anybody in the circle gets to come in and sit down opposing them and have a conversation with them. And it's like what's the term for speed chess? Where you have the clock and you're moving really fast.
Mm-hmm.
It's a high speed competitive debate format. And it's interesting because it's showing off a kind of cognitive and communication skill, but it allows for no thought, allows for no reflection, allows for no consideration, highly polarizing. And it's really, really weird to watch. I've seen both these guys do it, and I hate both of them doing it.
I watched one with Mehdi doing it, and I
Yeah.
was really turned off. Everybody was interrupting everybody.
Yeah, and he's like, he's right, and everybody's. I mean, there are things that I agree with him on, and found myself hating him.
Mm-hmm.
And in all of these things, back to what we were saying before, it's taking potentially complex or complicated issues and saying, no, it's not complicated. One of the reasons I stepped out of Facebook, which I did like a month ago now, is that I was in conversations where people were kind of, not even people I knew, people who knew people I knew were jumping into conversations I was having and yelling at me saying, it's not complicated. What's the matter with you? I think, my God, it really is. So I decided to step back. It's another kind of quiet, less social media, or very selective social media.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which reminder, we all know this here, but it's worth remembering that in that machinery, we are the product. We think it's something that we're using. We are the product. anytime the service is free. Near the product. So I'll stop here.
Well, I'm not sure I'm not sure that with the conclusion, anytime the service is free, we are the product, because in commons and in a different world on a parallel plane in the multiverse, lots of things can be free, and it's not
Totally.
because we are the product being sold off. It's
I
because
heard that as I was saying it, Sherry.
we're actually sharing resources in an
Yeah.
abundant way, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
Probably another good topic for an OGM
with,
call.
with Kevin and his Mennonite carpenters, not that.
Like that.
I totally get it.
Like that, exactly. So thank you for that. Scott, please. Scott, you need to unmute. Scott, you need to come back to the keyboard.
How about,
there you
how about
are.
now?
Good.
How about
Yes,
now?
we're hearing
right.
you now.
I'm actually on the road, so I will, so you can all hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
you sound like you're in a car, but we can hear you just fine.
I am in a car, but I will try to make it less car sound. I am enjoying this particular call in its entirety more than I have in a while. I am seeing or hearing a humbleness of certainty or uncertainty rather. I'm not exactly sure how to say that. I'm appreciating everyone saying, this is something that I wasn't expecting, and it's making me think about something differently, and I'm actually open to that. And I think that is if there is a root at our current crises, I think that's definitely one of them. Is that we are. I don't know if anybody saw. I wrote in the Flex this most recent issue about compression.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And sometimes I have a phrase that comes out and I don't actually will it to come out. It just comes out and then I see it and I think, that's actually kind of neat. And it was consuming more of less. And I thought that was interesting because the way I thought of that after I read it, after the words came out, I thought, yeah, that's really what it is. It's this idea of I already know what that is, so I don't need to consume any more of it. And I go look for the next thing and the next thing without actually really getting into the thing that I've already summed up in some way. But sorry, my thoughts are a little all over the place. I appreciated Stacy's comment about making predictions and then making second predictions and just putting some stake in there instead of saying, I know exactly what's going to happen. And we're probably wrong, at least in some way, we're probably wrong. I appreciated your comments, Jerry, about, futurists and trying to make predictions and guesses and then actually being held accountable to at least the prediction. I think that's all really important, and it's a humbleness. I think that's my only theme here. It's the willingness to say, I bet I don't see everything. I bet I don't know everything. And if something shows up, am I willing to incorporate that into my own mental model, allow it to be changed?
Thank you very much. Totally, really appreciate your reflections on the nature of this call, and you're calling things out I hadn't really noticed about the call, which I love. So that's great. Anyone else? Thoughts? Actually, let's go into that little moment of silence that Gil mentioned a moment ago. I will bring us back out in a moment. Thank you very much. Reflections, jokes, other things?
I
Stacy,
did have one other thing actually that I forgot to mention. Sorry, Jerry.
go ahead, and then Stacy.
When I was reading your email about the precipitated this, here's the theme of the call. I was thinking of that quote that I will misquote slightly, which is, "It's amazing what you can get done if nobody cares who gets the credit."
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just throwing that out there. I don't know if you want to riff on that a little bit, but if that's what it seemed like was happening, this is, if ceasefire, awesome, right? Like that's kind of what we want, but there's the issue of credit, and that is part of it at least. So that's all for me.
Thank you. The quote I have is from Harry Truman. It is amazing what you can accomplish if you do not care who gets the credit. And it's very likely one of those things that's been said by, actually, there's a Quote Investigator article about this that has a whole bunch of other people saying it. And their phrase is, "A man may do an immense deal of good if he does not care who gets the credit." And I'll post both of those in the chat.
I thought Kurt Vonnegut said that.
See?
It was Al Gore's favorite quotation when he was vice president, partly because it was said by a previous vice president when he was vice president and invisible. And every time Gore tried to stand up and take credit for something, boom, they worked so hard to make sure he was misrepresented, misquoted. At one point, he got excited about a project, a very cheap satellite that was going to orbit in the L1 point between the Earth and the Sun and provide 24-hour-a-day coverage of the sunny side of the Earth. I mean, literally less than $200 million. And as a NASA project goes, that's pretty darn cheap.
Mm-hmm.
And the Senate Republicans held it up for 5 years just because Gore thought it was a good idea. The entire community thought it was a great idea, incredibly cost effective, but they held it up. They didn't want him getting any credit for anything. They knew he was going to run for president, and they didn't want him to have any accomplishments.
Which is a marvel to me because Gore is Obama's. Oh, sorry. I've got the
Clinton's vice president.
Clinton's vice president. That's right. And because later, Obama, I'm pretty certain the right doesn't want Obama to succeed on anything. And he does. He manages to have the economy just go chug, 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 chug. And he manages to pass some degree of health coverage and so forth that they've not been able to extinguish. I track in my brain the many times that the right has tried to get rid of Obamacare. And it's an astonishing, really, there have been astonishing battles fought to try to, get rid of it. They've managed to weaken it, but not get rid of it entirely. And at this point, the thing we haven't mentioned for 3 calls or whatever is the lockdown in the government showdown over the budget and the government shutdown. And one of the big issues is the continuation of the subsidies that allow Obamacare to be affordable. That is one of the monster issues on the table that the Democrats have decided is a hill to die on for this particular issue. And it feels to me like the Democrats have the sort of moral upper hand on this one, although public opinion and moral upper hand don't always agree.
Fortunately, there's alliteration against them. Schumer's shutdown.
Schumer shut down. Oh, there you go.
But yeah, 40 times I think they had votes or tried to put a poison pill into the Obamacare program.
Yeah, it's astonishing. And I gotta say, Trump 2, which is how I refer to the second Trump administration, is payback for milquetoast efforts within the bounds of the system to try to fight back on things that the right didn't like. And I'm sitting here thinking SCOTUS, the Supreme Court of the United States, is very Republican because they stole seats because the left didn't act up and say, "Hey, wait a minute, you can't do that. We're gonna do something dramatic to make sure that we get to vote on those seats. Like two seats on Supreme Court were basically stolen, as far as I can tell.
Yep.
I don't understand, Jay, that you say that's Trumpist reaction to what the Dems did. What we're seeing is the playing out of a 50-year explicitly written about strategy.
Also, yes.
So let's, I think it's mythification to say, oh, they're angry at the Democrats who did or didn't do whatever. This has been, they've been rolling out this game plan since 1973.
Since the Powell memo in 70, I think.
Was that when it was that? I have the date wrong then. So I'm
Yeah,
talking,
yeah.
I'm
Powell
referencing the Powell memo. And if people haven't seen it, there's a movie called Heist, The Stealing of the American Dream, that unfolds that story. It's a terrific piece of work. I'll find the link and post it for y'all.
Um,
I'm not sure it
She's-
doesn't trace back to the Civil War, Gil.
Well, there's that too, and you can take it back, another 100 years before that. But in terms of an explicit published strategy,
Yeah.
And in the spirit of Maya Angelou, when people tell you who they are, believe them. You've got that there. You've got Bannon's writings. You've got Dugin's writings in the Russian sphere. None of this is mysterious.
yes.
Unless you get your information from the mass media, in which case it's mysterious.
So I agree with your framing of this is a much longer battle than I was just saying. Partly, I think what I was trying to say is the right's attempts to stay within the lines of the legal system, et cetera, did not work. They tried to bring things to the floor. The reason I think that most of what Trump does is by executive order and fiat and just acting outside of the bounds of what we think is what is likely even legal to do, is that bringing things to the floor of Congress did not work for a long time. Trump won, and a bunch of other efforts to tip over, all these things were flailing. And the left is grateful that a bunch of adults in the room threw their bodies in front of the more radical things that Trump 1 wanted to do. And in between Trump 1 and Trump 2, everybody in the far right said, well, great, that didn't work. We're going to take a much more dramatic approach, which is a fulfillment of things set in motion back in 1970, et cetera, which was a reaction to Barry Goldwater losing the election in 64, which threw the Conservative Party into a dramatic crisis, into a huge identity crisis, out of which come these, I think, long-term thinking, brilliant strategies. And I don't see long-term thinkers on the left. And sorry, this has become a bit of a political conversation toward the end of our time together, but thoughts on this, other ways of seeing this, welcome. Please throw them onto the table.
I don't think Powell contemplated Trump.
I don't think Newt Gingrich contemplated a Trump. I
think Powell was enough of an old, small L liberal.
Yeah.
To not be looking for a coup. He was looking for playing out within the game. Gingrich, in Jane's interpretation, gets a lot of credit for the mess, because when he became Speaker, he changed the schedule of the House of Representatives, and basically
he did many things.
Yeah, but this one is a pivotal one, because he shortened the work week so that members could go home on the weekends, quote, to be with their constituents. But the result of that is that the social relationships between Republican Democrat members and their families and their wives who had been friends broke, and maybe was one of the pivotal elements in the increasing polarization in the House.
So in my brain, I've got a thought. Gingrich created the current political rift in America. Under that, ways Gingrich transformed Congress. Do not cooperate, do not compromise, do not seek bipartisan solutions ever on anything. They got rid of, basically, he stopped people he instituted message discipline. He wouldn't let Republicans room with Democrats. They used to share crash pads in DC. They would rent a house with 4 bedrooms, and then Republicans and Democrats would room together and dine together and all that. He made that basically illegal. He said, you do that, we're not going to fund you for the primary. Damn. And having a throttle on the primaries was a huge power power move that really worked. So
Did you share the link to that piece of the brain, Jerry?
I just put a link in the chat to ways
Thank
English
you.
transformed Congress. I did that before I started
Yeah.
screen sharing.
There was a
Thank you.
wonderful article in what was it, Harper's years ago about I think it was called The Family. Was that the name of it?
Could be. Sounds familiar.
Staggering. Basically, it was a it it was a club slash it was in effect a condo, um a co-housing sort of situation where a whole bunch of Republican legislators were living together in a plex. Like it was like a polycule. It was absolutely incredible. And this thing had been set up in the
It's the Fellowship.
the is it the Fellowship?
Is this a Christian fundamentalist thing? So there's a mini series called The Family, which was on Netflix, which was about the Fellowship. And there's also a book called The Family, The Secret Fundamentalism at the Heart of American Power. I think you mean that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was founded in about 57 or something is when the visionary had the vision.
35.
1935. Holy
35, The Fellowship. Hold on, let me do a screen share again.
Anyway,
because I've got all this stuff in my brain.
Situation.
So here, here's the Fellowship, a secret society of Christian fundamentalists, founded by a lot of conservatives who hated the New Deal because this is against the New Deal. Abraham Vereide, Douglas Coe, names I don't remember even putting in my brain. But then in 2019, there was a mini series about it called The Family. I'm just going to connect these things to my brain. I mean, these are my notes from today's call. And so the Fellowship is basically the start of that.
Okay. Anyway, everybody should know about this. It's really the essence, perhaps, of how the machine works on the right.
And their main facility is a mile from where I live, and I often jog past it.
Wow.
It's hidden away in the woods in Arlington, Virginia. And it's mostly occupied by 20-somethings, conservative Christian men and women who may become their wives. And they all commute to the Hill where they work for various conservative.
Of course, the left has an equivalent and instrument just like this. It's called the Zen Center of San Francisco.
Thank you.
Anyway, well, we've gone down this rabbit hole pretty deep. Any other thoughts along this line? I think, Gil, when you were saying this is a long thought out strategy, it's been playing out for a long time. I completely agree. And I fear that there are many more terrific strategists on the right than on the left. On the left are a bunch of well-intentioned people who think policy is how to do things and want to build big institutions to solve social problems, which I think is a problematic approach to social problems. I actually do.
And who trust reason and fairness more than power.
Yes. And on the right are a bunch of people who understand power and working together more than all those other things.
The other thing the right has had, though, which is, wow, I think we just had a little quake.
Oh, I thought ice was at your door
or something. Is large, consistent, stable funding.
Yes.
That built institutions and built farm teams and trained people. But I mean, I'm on the board of a fiscal sponsor, so I deal with a bunch of not-for-profits and foundations and so forth. And the amount of grief that folks have to go through to get funding, the micromanagement that the foundations have over the folks they fund, the amount of time that's spent in reporting rather than doing the work. Is horrific, and it's an echo in a lot of layers of American society. Because you look at the growth of the administrative layer in everything from universities to healthcare to everywhere else. There's that mess, but with Scafie and Mellon and various others on the right, there's been very consistent funding. And I guess the other part of this, which is maybe problematic as well, is that for the right, it's a very good investment. Buying Congress people is an incredibly good investment. The ROI is terrific. And that's not the language of the left. That's the language of the right. And they've been playing that for a long time, very effectively. So,
Totally agree. There's my tracking of conservative foundations.
yeah, and the fellowship.
The Koch Foundation's SCAFE, is it SCAFE?
I think so. I don't know.
Koch family, Heritage, Bradley, Lynn and Harry Bradley Foundation, Smith Richardson Foundation. These are all deeply conservative foundations that have funded the movement we just talked about. So you're right, and the left. I'm busy listening very carefully for any progressive who's saying something different and sensible, and I'm not hearing any. I'm hearing a couple who have struck authenticity. They're figuring out how to connect with people. That's great, but their messages don't sound any different from a traditional progressive. And I'm really concerned that this is a battle of ideologies where the left doesn't have a grip on any layer of how to do this better or right.
So, Jerry, how could that be different?
So I'm really interested
Let's
in
have that
how
be a
to
topic.
I'm really interested in how to build a better world. And some of the calls we've had, I mean, we had a little series on what works in governance. We had, I think I did 4 calls on little g governance instead of big G government. And my goal was to try to collect up a stack. Right now, my shorthand for this is what are our next 2 stacks? And try to figure out what is a set of ways of doing decisions and making collective decisions as society and solving problems. What is a way of open sourcing those things so that communities can just grab them and implement them, as opposed to telling everybody to do X or Y or Z? Because I think people are rejecting mandates left, right, and center. So how do we make things so functional and so appealing that I don't know that I know neighborhoodos. Kalia, thank you. I'm going to go look it up. How do we put on offer a bunch of things that we know work in some places and then make it very, very easy for other communities to implement them? And in a non-political way, because the left-right party system is stuck in everything we've been talking about for 87 minutes. Right? And so how do we make some alternate way of living together and making an abundant society happen that then grows up from the bottom? And then if somebody wants to make a political party out of that, great, but they'll at least have some foundation to work from.
I think there's an orientational shift that's not about ways of doing things. I really think there's what's been lost, what's missing in technology, and what's missing in the capitalist system, which is really at the root of a lot of this, is any moral, ethical, or value orientation transcendent of individual interest relative to the capitalist driver, which is profit. And all of the structures and all of the ways in which underlying moral, ethical, value considerations and empathy as a fundamental human caring were supported had to do with the actual societal fabric supporting connection between people, caring of people for other people. And all of that's been sort of denatured out of the system. And the question is how to sort of not provide, you can't provide that. But what I think and believe is that we can spark it. And that the feelings that are in that domain of empathy and care and value and ethic feels better. And that the younger generations today are actually, there's a vacuum where that belongs, where that exists, where that can be catalyzed. And anything that could come along to offer that, I think would explode like what happened in the 60s, except for those generations. I don't think they're so less, but if you look and watch at what culturally they're swimming around in, it sure looks like it. But I think they recognize the absence of. I think they're feeling the absence of. I don't think anybody's offering them that.
By some quirk of fate, we are right at the end of our call time, but that sounds like a really lovely thing, a lovely note to end our call on. I'm afraid we won't have Ken Homer around for a bit. So we are poemless at the end of our call, which leaves a little gap in my heart. But thank you for joining in wholeheartedly in this conversation. I really appreciate it. Feedback, afterthoughts, put them on the OGM mailing list. And let's see where this goes. Kalia, does it make sense to have an OGM call about verifiable communities so we can learn more and understand what the initiative is?
Sure, if you want to invite Grace.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Cool.
She's just about to have a whole deck about the initiative, so that's good timing.
She's just about to have a what?
A deck.
A deck. Super. That is good timing. Awesome. Oh man, Mike. So close. Thank you all. This has been a really informative, groovy, and slightly frightening call. I will see you on the inner tubes and in another week.